introductions of the project team, and those you'll hear speaking. Sarah Christensen is a senior transportation planner with the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission, and she's the one with the really great background, and she just waved. Zach Zaviglia is a principal and vice president at Mark Thomas, and he's the consultants project manager. Lindsay Christensen is an environmental planner with ICF, and she is spearheading the environmental planning process. And then again, I'm Gladys Cornell with AIM Consulting, working on the community outreach.
Hey everybody, my name's Sarah Christensen. I'm with the Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission. I'm really happy to see so many people attending this meeting about this important project. So as you know, if you live in this county, the traffic on Highway 1 is pretty severe. And the reason for that is because we really in this county have two general population areas, and that's Watsonville and Santa Cruz. And Highway 1 is really the only regional route between the two. And it results in severe congestion in the peak morning and afternoon hours. So to address that congestion, the RTC in partnership with Caltrans developed a program of projects, a multimodal solution to the congestion. And that includes a bus on shoulder facility for 7.5 miles, as well as auxiliary lanes between the interchanges, bicycle and pedestrian overcrossings to provide access over the freeway, as well as replacement of local overcrossings as needed. So the approach to our Highway 1 program is really a multimodal approach that addresses many problems, including congestion, transit travel times and reliability, and bicycle pedestrian access and connectivity over Highway 1. Next slide. So what's really unique about this county is that we're one of only 2 counties in the state of California that has the ability to operate transit buses on the shoulders of major highways. So this legislation was passed in 2013, and it allows Monterey Salinas Transit District as well as Santa Cruz Metro to operate buses on shoulders of major highways with the approval of Caltrans and CHP. And so this is really a unique opportunity. Monterey County is the only other county in the state that has this ability, and they've decided not to proceed with the bus on shoulder program at this time. So we're really a unique county here, and we have this really great opportunity to implement this type of facility on Highway 1. Next slide. So the project, I'm very happy and proud to say today that this project is fully funded. So we have Measure D funds on this project to serve as a match for construction, as well as to fund some of the pre-construction activities. We have State Transportation Improvement Funds, or STIP funds. And then we recently were awarded a grant for 3 projects in this county. And that was from the California Transportation Commission. The funds are Senate Bill 1 funds under 2 programs, Solutions to Congested Corridors program and the Local Partnership program. And so with all of that funding, we are fully funded for this project. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have a program of projects here. The first project that's underway is where it says phase 1. Can you go back? And that project will extend the auxiliary lanes. So there's existing auxiliary lanes between Morrissey and SoCal. And this project will extend the auxiliary lanes from SoCal to 41st interchanges. It will also implement a bus on shoulder facility for about 3-mile segment. And it will build a new bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing at Chanticleer Avenue. This project is in the final design phase. We're wrapping things up and trying to get it advertised for construction bids and construction can start as soon as next year if all the funding gets lined up in time. So that's the first project underway. The second project that we have going on for this program is where the big red box is. That's phase 2, the project that we're talking about today. So that our project will extend that bus on shoulder facility an additional 3 miles. It will add auxiliary lanes between the Bay Porter and Park interchanges, as well as between Park and State Park Drive interchanges. It will replace the Capitola Avenue Bridge, and it will replace it with a wider bridge with bicycle and pedestrian facilities, so bike lanes and sidewalks on that bridge, which is going to be a huge improvement. And then lastly, the project proposes to build the bicycle and pedestrian overcrossing at Vista Drive. And the third project, which is about a year behind this project, it just started the environmental phase this year. It will finish off the 7.5 mile bus on shoulder facility. It will build auxiliary lanes between State Park and Rio Del Mar interchanges, as well as between Rio Del Mar and Freedom Boulevard interchanges. And it will also construct segment 12 of the Coastal Rail Trail, which includes adding 2 new bicycle and pedestrian overcrossings in Aptos. So that will be a great improvement. And that project is in the environmental phase, about a year behind this project. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Zach, who is our engineering consultant project manager, and he's going to give you a great presentation about the project design.
Thanks, Sarah. So what I wanted to do is walk through just some key aspects of this project. Like Sarah mentioned, the project spans over roughly about 3 miles. And so that's a lot to try and explain on some slides. So we're going to do our best to illustrate all of the various components of this project through the next several slides. So Danielle, if you can just follow along with me with the cursor. I wanted to start off on the top left corner with the State Park Drive interchange. What we've done here is broken out this corridor to try and illustrate the overall improvements that are spread across these 3 miles. So what you'll notice on these few images is there's a couple things that are highlighted. So if we start at the State Park Drive interchange and work our way to the right, working our way north, you'll see that if you pause right there, Danielle, that's the Mar Vista, that's the proposed Mar Vista pedestrian overcrossing that we'll touch on in a minute with some more specific design information. Also right there at that location, you'll see that there are a series of black lines with yellow dots. And so what those yellow dots represent are locations where sound walls are proposed along the corridors. And that came out of the noise study that we did as part of the environmental document. The other thing I wanted to highlight on that portion of the image is you see that the highway has this pink highlight on it. So what's we're trying to show with that highlight is in this particular portion of the corridor, there is an extra wide median for anyone that's familiar with the corridor. And what we're proposing to do in order to add the auxiliary lanes in this segment, we're proposing instead of widening to the outside of the freeway, we would instead construct the new lanes within that existing median. So we'd remove the existing median and widen to the center of the freeway. I'll illustrate this more on subsequent slides. Danielle, if we go down to the next image right there, you see that that pink highlight that shows the inside widening continues all the way up almost towards the Capitola Avenue overcrossing that Sarah mentioned earlier. And then right there, you see that we've transitioned from this pink to a green highlight. What that means is in this portion of the corridor, it's very constrained already. So in order to fit the proposed auxiliary lane, what we're going to do is actually widen the freeway on the outsides. And again, I have a few slides to illustrate this point later on in the presentation. And then also just to mention, you see that again, that black line with the yellow dots, that's showing locations of proposed sound walls along the corridor. All right, next slide, Danielle. So these cross sections just further illustrate what I was just describing. So if we start on the left side at the top left, that's the existing cross section for that most southern portion of the corridor between State Park, almost all the way up to Capitola Avenue. And you can see there's an existing median there. The image that's shown below that, that is the proposed widening. So the outside of the freeway stays where it is, and we would just widen in that interior space. And that was done for a number of reasons. Primarily, it was done to preserve the existing vegetation along the outsides of the freeway in both directions. If we now go to the top right portion of the slide, that is the existing cross section between Capitola Avenue and the Bay Porter interchange. And like I mentioned there, there's not enough space in the median to fit the extra lane. So what's shown below that is the proposed widening on the outside of the freeway in order to fit that auxiliary lane through that space. So I know it's a little hard to even see it in this perspective. So Danielle, if we go to the next slide. From this vantage point, we're sitting essentially on top of the Capitola Avenue overcrossing, looking north towards the Bay Porter interchange. This is what the corridor looks like currently today. And the next slide illustrates the change that we would be making. So again, all of the existing lanes stay where they are, and you can see where that widening has occurred on the outside to add that auxiliary lane between the interchanges. Next slide, Danielle. This particular view, now we've moved our way south along the corridor. We're just north of the State Park Drive interchange looking south. So again, this is the existing freeway that exists today. And the next slide here shows that perspective of what it would look like in the future. So the outside of the freeway hasn't changed. The existing outermost lane is in the exact same location as it will be in the future. You can see that that new lane was added in the median. I also wanted to highlight here in this image in the background, you can see where the proposed Vista Drive pedestrian overcrossing comes in. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you can see the sound walls that are proposed along the corridor through this stretch. So again, the primary reason to do this is to preserve as much of the vegetation as possible along the outside of the freeway. Next slide, Danielle. Sarah covered it with bus on shoulder and the unique aspects that this project allows us. So the county is unique in allowing for bus on shoulder on the freeway. So what I wanted to just quickly do is illustrate how that process works for this corridor. And the way it works is between the interchanges, what's shown in blue are the auxiliary lanes that connect the on-ramp to the off-ramp at the that next interchange down. In between the interchanges, the bus would operate within the auxiliary lane. Now those auxiliary lanes end at the next interchange. So normally a vehicle that's continuing through has to merge into traffic and then drive within that general purpose lane to the next point where they can merge over. The bus is unique in that it doesn't merge back into the traffic. What it does, which is shown in orange, is it is allowed to continue on the shoulder, so it does not have to get integrated back into the general purpose lane. It can just drive along the shoulder till it can then get in the auxiliary lane on the other side of the interchange. And that's a really key aspect. And again, there's special authorizations that came with allowing this on the freeway. Next slide, Danielle. So what you'll notice as this program of bus on shoulder improvements gets started is there's going to be new signing that typically has not been seen on the freeway before. So this just shows a picture of what that could look like. In general, there will probably be some red pavement that is installed, and then you'll see the bus only legend that's installed in the shoulder. And the reason why this is being installed is to prevent vehicles or to prevent any other operators from using that shoulder. It's really intended just for the transit operators to drive on the shoulder. Next slide, Danielle. Moving on to the other component of the project, I wanted to touch on the Vista pedestrian overcrossing. So just to orient everyone looking at that top image on the slide. So in this particular image, imagine north is facing up. The Bay Porter interchange would be off to the right, the far right of the slide, and then the State Park interchange would be off to the far, I'm sorry, reversed. Bay Porter would be off to the left, State Park Drive would be off to the right. So what you'll see is that the pedestrian overcrossing, because of the requirements to provide ADA access across this structure, you end up with a structure that's a little longer than what you would normally expect. And that's because there's maximum grades that govern how we can get up over the freeway traffic. We held a virtual public meeting earlier this year to review a number of different alternatives for this pedestrian overcrossing and also touch on all of the planning work that has gone into it to date. And so what this represents is one of the concepts that has come out of that previous public workshop with the formed architectural treatment on the bridge and then the aesthetic railing that would be proposed on the pedestrian overcrossing. Next slide, Danielle. As part of our previous community workshop that we did, we also touched on various other aesthetic treatments. And so what this image is showing just other opportunities that exist at the pedestrian overcrossing, from form liners on the retaining walls, various entry monument treatments, and other aspects. More design information is going to go into this concept, but we wanted to share that with everyone tonight. Next slide. And then just to help illustrate the point, because we know looking at those plan view graphics are somewhat difficult at times, this is the existing intersection at Mar Vista and McGregor, again, looking south. And then the next slide shows what that intersection will look like once the pedestrian overcrossing is constructed. So you can see the ramp leading up to the bridge, and then you can also see the sound wall that would be constructed in the back of that ramp structure. Next slide. The other structure that's going to be replaced as part of the project is the Capitola Avenue overcrossing. So this bridge needs to be replaced in order to facilitate the auxiliary lane improvements that are going to be built along Highway 1. So what's shown in the top right corner is the existing cross section of the Capitola Avenue overcrossing. So currently it's 13-foot lanes in either direction with 3-foot sidewalks. And as part of the project, that would be fully replaced with a wider bridge that has standard 6-foot sidewalks, a 5-foot class 2 on-street bike lane, and then 11-foot travel lanes. Next slide, Danielle. In order to build this project, what I wanted to highlight is that Capitola Avenue overcrossing would need to be closed for a period that's roughly around 14 months. In order to build the new structure. And in order to accommodate traffic, we've identified this detour that would go over to the Bay Porter interchange, up and around to Soquel Drive and then back. So this represents that longest path if you were standing on one side of the bridge and wanted to get to the absolute opposite side of the bridge. And again, we anticipate this detour would be in place for roughly 14 months.
Okay, I'm Lindsay Christensen, and I'm representing the environmental team today. This slide shows an overview of the environmental process. We recently released the public draft environmental document, and we are currently in the that bubble on the bottom, that phase that shows a public and agency review period, which is about a little longer than 45 days. This meeting is another opportunity to hear from the public directly. And after the comment period closes on January 11th, we will be reviewing all the comments and providing written responses to each of them in the final EIR, which should be around winter 2021. That should be 2021. Can you go to the next slide, please, Danielle? This document is it's a combined document, so it satisfies both the California Environmental Quality Act and National Environmental Policy Act. So it's an EIR-EA. The Environmental Impact Report satisfies CEQA, and the Environmental Assessment, or EA, satisfies NEPA. The purpose of the environmental document is to identify and disclose the physical environmental effects of the project and to identify feasible mitigation measures. We also assess cumulative effects and growth impacts, and we use public input during the decision-making process. Next slide, please. So our document analyzes in detail impacts to the coastal zone, growth, traffic, transportation, visual and aesthetics, hydrology and floodplain, water quality and stormwater runoff, paleontological resources, hazardous waste and materials, air quality, noise and vibration, energy, biological resources, cumulative impacts, and climate change. So during the technical study phase and in our environmental document, we identified that these resources would have no impacts. So land use, consistency with regional and local plans, parks and recreational facilities, community character and cohesion, environmental justice, utilities and emergency services, cultural resources, geology and soils, plant species, agricultural resources, mineral resources, and wild and scenic rivers. We found that impacts to the coastal zone, growth, hydrology and floodplain, water quality and stormwater runoff, and air quality would have less than significant impacts and no mitigation would be required. These resources, paleontological resources, hazards and hazardous materials, noise and vibration, energy, and biological resources were found to be significant, but could be reduced to a less than significant level with mitigation measures. We found two resources conservatively to be significant and unavoidable. So State Route 1 is an eligible state scenic highway. Some mature vegetation would be removed and sound walls would be constructed. And while we do have mitigation measures that would reduce this impact, but not to a less than significant level. And then for traffic and transportation, in the traffic analysis, we modeled existing conditions, opening year 2025 and horizon year 2045 for both a no build and a build scenario. And we looked at morning and evening peak periods, and we found that in some scenarios, VMT, our vehicle miles traveled, would increase on the main line, which is why we call this significant and unavoidable. So the added capacity, while it would increase VMT in some scenarios, we're expecting it to largely be offset by the transit improvements. And also we found that there would be fewer bottlenecks under the build scenario, and level of service or delay and average speed are both projected to improve. So the next steps for the environmental process, as I said, the comment period closes on January 11th. So make sure you submit your formal comments to Laura Bertena at Caltrans with the information here, and it's on the project website. It's in the environmental document. And then we will be reading and responding to each of those comments in about a month from now.
I just want to close on this slide here with the schedule. So next steps, we're a little bit more than halfway done with the environmental phase here. And the final design phase is going to be about a 2-year long process. So there's plenty more opportunities to get feedback and get opportunities for design considerations for this project moving forward. And then construction, we're looking at having the project construction ready by the end of 2022 and beginning in 2023. So just follow the RTC on social media and check our web pages periodically for updates, and we'll try to keep everybody as informed as possible. But I just want to thank everybody for your engagement in this project. And just to reiterate, the written comments for the EIR-EA are due by 5 p.m. on January 11th. And the information is up on your screen. There's also information on the RTC website. So.
Okay. And with that, I think we can let people go and have their dinner or whatever else they would like to do this evening. And once again, thank you so much for participating. A PDF of the PowerPoint will be available on the website. Probably give a few days before you check it. So give us a little time to get it on there. So thank you very much. It looks like everybody is now heading out the door.
Thanks, Gladys. Bye.